Meet the intrepid crew of the rogue trader vessel Emperor's Humor 2 as they face the horrors of the warp and void, bravely assembled for their next perilous mission. Lunch!
Howdy, it's TikitheHutt, and welcome to the Munitorum Breakroom. I'm here with Beardo and with LaughingBlock.
What's up?
Yo, what's up, people? It's your boy, Skinny Peeps.
Well, that'll help ID him later at the morgue. So, speaking of your bodily features, who exactly are you? It's always one of the first questions we ask, is kind of ask people who they are, what brought them to this awesome hobby of tabletop wargaming, and what keeps them at the table. So, LaughingBlock, who exactly are you?
Well, I'm a voice actor. I'm an upcoming content creator. I'm in the process of making a YouTube channel. That's kind of been my dream for a bit. But my end goal is I want to be a professional voice actor. I also went to school for audio engineering, and I've been a 40K fan since I was 18. So going on a little over 5 years, or basically the tail end of 8th edition. Everyone's favorite edition, although I barely got to play any of it. Yeah,
I left in 8th.
But I primarily played 40K during 9th, and I mostly got into Warhammer through the lore. The lore just fascinated me. The moment I heard about there's this golden god guy on a throne, and I was like, that sounds intriguing. I want to learn more.
So the Emperor got you into it. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Him and his many arms. I wonder if Game Workshop truly knows the gateway drug that is Black Library. 'Cause that's what got me way back in the day, starting with the Gaunt's Ghost book.
I call heresy, sir. Heresy. There is no 8 arms on the Emperor. There's only the Emperor.
Like I always say, just imagine how much of a beatdown he would have had on Horus if he had more arms. I'm telling you.
I'm telling you, there's no joke. There is an 8-arm Emperor shirt in the works.
That is true. That is. Well, both of those are true, to be fair.
It would explain his psychic power, just saying.
But generally for Warhammer, I love Warhammer to death. It means so much to me. It is a sci-fi universe that has connected to me basically more than anything else. My first love was Halo, just like many young lads was during the 2000s. But Warhammer speaks to something to me that I almost never had as a kid, where it was like, it's this overly bombastic, dark, over the top, edgy, grim, dark universe that just kind of speaks to like a morbid curiosity into me. In me that I've never really had an outlet to kind of express other than Warhammer.
It's really easy to be gritty when everything is grimdark. I mean, who's the good guy? There is no good guy. But I want to play the good guy. You can't play the good guy.
As Adeptus Ridiculous, or Bricky would put it, you know what's more badass than being the bad guy? If everyone was the bad guy, and that's exactly. Warhammer. That's cool. Being the bad guy is badass. Like, being the bad guy is cool.
Everybody wants to play the bad guy. I mean,
and everyone can be the bad guy, and we can shoot each other with giant mechs into this endless amount of infantry that almost look like it's World War II, but they shoot lasers instead. Like, that is just, it's over the top, it's stupid, it's bombastic, and it's just so charming that how could you not like Warhammer? Oh yeah, the bolter being an automatic, like an automatic / semi-automatic
RPG,
like grenade launcher, yeah, like, is so stupid but lovable. It literally is just a 50 rapid fire, like highly accurate 50 BMG that just fires
75 millimeter round
that explode.
It's a 75 millimeter mass reactive explosive round. It explodes after it hits.
So, not to be that guy, but there actually was once, they tried it once in Vietnam, there was a gyrojet pistol I'm trying to think. I think it was like maybe 13 millimeter, 12. I think 10 to 12 millimeters. Shot these little rockets, but they were gyro stabilized, so it shot what looked like a bullet, but it was a miniature rocket, and it would ignite mid-flight and then just carry through. The whole point was they're hoping it would get to the brush better. Spoiler alert, it did. It was wildly expensive. It didn't work very well.
That definitely sounds like something America would do during the Vietnam War.
It was called a gyrojet. That's probably like the closest thing you'll get to.
This napalm stuff isn't killing
a
enough.
Modern day bolter.
I know what to do. Let's rapid fire grenade launcher shells. That will solve all of our problems.
I'll say, not to get too far into it, but another cool thing was the China Lake, which a lot of people confuse with just like the regular like Insert 9 Thumper. No, the China Lake was basically take like a pump shotgun, like a 12 gauge pump shotgun, and just scale it up to 40 millimeter. Hey, and that's what the China Lake was. So it's basically like a pump action 40 millimeter grenade launcher that held like, I think like 2 in the tube and like 1 in the pipe. I think it was insane. I think they only made like 40 of them.
Hey, if you can't get, they can't hide in the jungle if there is no jungle. Just saying.
We done exploded your jungle.
We done just exploded your jungle. Your jungle is exploded now, Asians.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, the lore brought me in too. Like the God's Ghost really got me, but what really got a hold of me in the first way I entered, I told these guys last time, was Battlefield Gothic. So I'm much more, instead of the reason we said Halo, that's what got me to Halo. The games were good, but that first book, the space combat was amazing. So that's what got me was Battlefield Gothic. And then when I read about Gene Stealers hiding away and then Space Hulks, like, oh yeah, this is totally my bag. So I came in through the Battlefield Gothic route.
Yeah, and at this point, like, I haven't read the Battlefield Gothic books. I want to after hearing you describe them. They sound really cool. But I'm at the point now where I've listened to like over 20 books in the Heresy and like completed them, like audiobooks.
Those are rookie numbers. You got to get those numbers up.
I know.
I've never read a single one.
Considering that I've like only in the last like 9 months like really started delving into 40K books and actually like reading them, I think that speaks a lot to the general quality of most of 40K's books, because despite the volume of them, gosh, they are really good on average.
Oh yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah, they are. Like, I can say, like, if anyone wants to like get into Warhammer, there's like at least 40K or 30K. There's 2 ways. Read The Infinite and the Divine. It is one of the best books I've ever read, unironically. I have literally read the Odyssey multiple times. Yes, that Odyssey. And I can say that The Infinite and Divine is a better written book. It's just, it's wonderful. And if you want to, like, ooh, Space Marines look cool, read the first 5 books of the Horus Heresy. And then after that point, just follow the storyline of whatever legion sounds the most interesting to you, and then read the Siege of Terra, and you've basically gotten the Horus Heresy down. Fulgrim is one of the best books I've ever read. And I was not an Emperor's Children fan going into that book, and I ended up really liking them after the fact, so that should tell you enough.
Oh yeah, I mean, just as a musician, the whole Noise Marine thing, one of the minis that I saw even before I got into 40K was the Noise Marine with a guitar, and I've got to have one. I still haven't gotten one, but I've got to get one.
Oh yeah, and there's a scene in the Fulgrim book. This is like not exactly a spoiler, but kind of something to intrigue maybe some people's interest. There's a scene that gives the origin of the Noise Marines. And it is one of the most hauntingly chilling, like eldritch horror things in a book I've ever read. It literally goosebumms. It's so good.
Think it's in an audiobook, or is that too on the point?
It is an audiobook, and the audiobook is incredible. Go read it or listen to it. Fulgrim is unironically the best Horus Heresy book I've read so far. Go read it. It's just a good book.
See, I think another good entry route, I think, for maybe the more common person, like I said, if all that's almost too space opera or too gothic, is the Eisenhorn route. I said, obviously, being, I was interested in the military from a young age, even before I enlisted. But so I picked up Gaunt's Ghost and I immediately fell in love. I was like, yeah, this is exactly what I wanted. This is my theory.
Tom Clancy in space.
But for just like the normal person who's not sure what race they really want to get into, I think Eisenhorn is probably one of the better entryways, because you have at least 3 solid books plus short stories, but you have 3 solid books in line that cover so much of the universe, and from one pretty good central character, and he carries around with him like a small little gaggle of a group that's pretty diverse. So I think it's a pretty good entry point for just the common person, just to pick up, Xenos, the first one.
Yeah, for Gaunt's Ghost, I have not read any, and same for the Eisenhorn books, but I've heard nothing but good things, and I want to read them. So,
man, you have got to get into the Gaunt's Ghost.
That's one of the things I'm going to go into next.
Books.
After I'm reading a couple more heresy books, I'm gonna finish up I'm gonna go through the Twice Dead King Necron books, and then I was gonna go into the Eisenhorn trilogy.
It's really good. It's really good.
Yeah, the Battlefleet Gothic, it's so dark, but so good. Imagine, like the brutality of the Expanse, that type of space combat, but with giant metal cathedrals. I'm talking like in these ships, one of the short stories is called Mortal Fuel, and I love that term because that's what it works off. It works off, even like a frigate would have hundreds of slaves that aren't even ratings. They're literally just people who, almost like the Snowpiercer movie, who just shovel stuff into the train and work in the engine room, and they literally just die. And so every planet they come to after the guard takes it, they have to go down and do press gang and just collect all the homeless people, all the criminals, and just turn them into mortal fuel that the ship literally burns to get from one planet to the next. They're not like actively throwing people in the engine. They just work so hard that they die
between the different planets.
Yeah,
you want to know
so
something?
Dark.
You want to know something funny about the ships of the Imperium? I'm sure these guys know about it, but maybe some people in the audience don't. And that is, most of the Imperium ships, they don't just fire lasers, they fire conventional ammunition. And that shit's pretty big compared to the ships that are firing them.
Yeah,
and those
micro
ships
cannons and macro cannons,
are miles long, like 14-mile long vessels, some of them. They are loaded by hand. I am not kidding you. The conventional shells that are literally like the size of like a 3-story building, they have like 1,000 serfs and like slaves and servitors pick them up and load them into the cannons manually.
And God forbid if you drop one.
That's Warhammer. That's 40K.
You gotta remember the dangers of automation and stuff like that. So there's not a lot of servitor loaders. And plus, you have all the mortal fuel you could ever want, and it's redundable too, because if anything happens, you can just give those people their tools and just let them loose on whatever boards that ship.
But I think that is perfectly exemplary of how over the top and stupid Warhammer is, and just how grimdark, but just. It's so charming in how dark it is that how could you not think that that's
Battlefleet
fun?
Gothic? The reason why those officers act like they're nobility, because often they are. A lot of the naval officers are nobility, but they act like that because they are the lords of their own. Basically, it's a space castle. You have the peasants down below, and you have the armsmen. It's not a
space castle. It's like a space country.
It's especially some of the bigger ships. Yeah, but some of the smaller ones, they're not too big. You look at a Cobra destroyer. I think it's got 500 souls on board. It's not crazy.
Most battleships in the Imperium are if London was I'm not just talking about I'm talking about the entirety of the mass of that,
the whole Mortal
island,
Engine series.
Was a fucking ship in the sky. That is
an Emperor class battleship. I should look up the specs real quick.
It's New York, but if it was a ship.
Yeah, maybe not in square footage, but in mass and just machine and people. Oh God, yeah.
And that's not talking about the Blackstone Fortress or some of the bigger Tau
for a Gloria,
not Tau, but the Necron ships. Oh my God,
for a Gloriana class battleship, it probably is actually in terms of actual square footage as well. Although Gloriana class battleships are over the top, and they're what the Primarchs. Yeah. They're what the Primarchs flew in. So
the only ones that are like the only Imperium ships that I can think of that are like bigger would be an Art Mechanicus, and those things are insane.
Or a Blackstone Fortress, but the Imperium doesn't really like fly around with those. They just use them as like basically space stations.
Or as bait for Abaddon the Terrible, who's terrible at his job.
Hey, Abaddon is kind of cool now.
Now he is.
All right, so that's what killed me, and I think that's why I left at the end of 7th before 8th. It's just the changing. The lore was just so static, not in a bad way, but we're kind of added on to it. But you could be anywhere in the lore when you played on the tabletop, right? So the lore had been there for so many years, but then in 8th, it's like they just kicked it straight into hyperdrive. I was like, why are you changing everything now? I think that's what really got me, is they just decided to mess with the lore. I was like, why?
I quite like a lot of the stuff introduced during that time period. I've actually read the Plague War books, and the trilogy for Gilliman doing the Terran Crusade of getting back to Terra to start the Indomitus Crusade. They're actually really good books, by the way. It's nice that Gilliman is not a Gary Stu. Like, he fucks up, he makes mistakes, he's prideful, but he is a tactical genius, and those other things sometimes get in the way of that. And he's not the best fighter. Man gets kidnapped like every other book.
I mean, we could say that Gilliman is basically Princess Peach at this point.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, but Gilliman's a Chad, to be fair. Like, Gilliman is actually, like, in the Heresy, he's written fine. Like, he's like not a great character, but he's like not a bad character at all. He's just there and is a decent, like, is decently interesting. But in the modern timeline, the stuff that they've done with Gilliman is actually really cool. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, after reading the Plague War books, it's like you really can't not like Gilliman, almost. Like, I understand the hate for the Ultramarines, don't get me wrong, but people, like, you got to keep in mind, guys, that like the Ultramarine hate has kind of been taken a bit too far, if we're being honest, because there's people that legitimately like that faction and play that army. And for everyone to just constantly just be like, haha, blueberries, haha, Smurf village, haha, and just like rip on their faction just because they're the poster boys, like, eventually it goes from being a joke to now as a community we're just kind of being dicks and just punching down.
Wait, how is that punching down if it's just, the same? If it's a chapter in the Space Marines, all the armies are, well, we can't say they're roughly the same because there's codex creep, but if there's a whole bunch of armies, like I get, not harassing someone for the army they choose, fine, fair enough, but I wouldn't call that punching down. I mean, it's the same price point as any other Space Marine chapter, if not probably cheaper, because there's, I'm assuming when you start playing like Space Wolves or some other more Grey Knights and stuff like that, I'm assuming those models could be a little bit more pricier per point, because there's fewer of them. But I don't really see how that's punching down. It just seems like punching laterally, I guess. I can see no punching, but I wouldn't really call that punching down.
Punching laterally.
I specifically in the YouTube community, I would say, some creators just kind of like...
Yeah, a lot of YouTube guys dump on the Ultramarines a little too much.
A little too much. And like,
talking
for
to
some
you,
people,
DK.
Yeah, and for some people, that is their favorite faction. Like... They're not mine. Like, I mostly just like their Primarch, and Calgar's kind of a Chad, but like everything else, I could take it or leave it, to be honest. But just because I feel that way doesn't mean that other people who play the Ultramarines, who read their books,
I think it might be like
them.
Not necessarily strong man, because that's a strong word and that invokes reactions. What I think it is, I think it might be the ideology. Maybe I'm reading too far into it. It might be the ideology of the Ultramarines, where it's like, oh, we stick to the Adeptus Custardes, we stick straight to the rules. Like, rules is written, not rules is intended.
I think it's mostly just because they're
people
older.
Think that for people who play like that too, are like, I trust everything GW writes. Every edition's a great edition. You're like, oh, thank you so much for this FAQ. Thanks for nerfing this army. I'll always believe the rules.
We have a couple Ultramarine players in my local play groups, and they're usually, like, all the Ultramarine players I've ever met are pretty chill dudes. Like, they're not GW simps. Like they just think like the regimented, like perfectly in line, like super soldiers is just cool. Like
Maybe they just like blue.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, no shame. Like whatever chapter you like, but I think it's like a sports team where like I may before the Buccaneers were cool, I really liked the Buccaneers because they were a terrible team. Someone's like, "Oh, your team's terrible this year." I was like, "Yeah, of course they are. It's the Buccaneers."
But let's
Who cares?
be honest, the main reason Ultramarine hate exists is because they were kind of written like Gary Stews for like almost a decade by a bunch of GW writers. I have not read those books, but that is what I have heard. And based on what I have, there's also some characters in other factions that kind of got that treatment too. And they
I never read them, so I can't go one way or the other.
AKA Kaldor Drago. If you've ever read or looked up any of the lore for that guy, you're just like, this went from being stupid cool to just being like really dumb.
This is
like,
bad shonen anime pro tag level.
Yeah, and I like dumb shonen anime pro tag level, so that's saying a lot. Like Kaldor Drago is like the definition of a Gary stew.
So now that we got what kind of got you in, and clearly it's the lore, and that's pretty common. I think they got a lot of us. What's really keeping you at the actual tabletop versus just being like, this isn't for me, and going back to the lore? Like, what gets you showing up to the table throwing dice?
I just like the way 40K feels. I just like moving physical models on the tabletop that I've painted or that I bought from eBay, and just like seeing like commanding an army, like the feeling of like being a general and having those like kind of like 40 chest moments just makes you feel good. Also, I've spent too much money on this hobby to where at this point I'm invested at this point. I can't really not play 40K.
The sunk cost fallacy. It should be every chapter in every economics book when it comes to sunk cost fallacy. You should be like, have you heard of Warhammer 40K?
Pretty much, yeah. To show how much of a Warhammer fan I am, I'm literally a Titan owner. Like I own I think these two know that I own a Warhound, but the audience does not yet. And yes, I do own a Forge World Warhound. Did I paint it? No.
Pics up.
That's impressive. Well done.
Did I build it? No. I bought it off of eBay because I'm not insane, and I got a pretty good deal on it. I got a really nicely painted Warhound type, like traditional like Mars patterned Warhound Titan for basically $800 on the dot after tax. Like, which is, if you have ever looked up the eBay pricing for Titans, that's really good. And it was pre-magnetized. I literally could not ask for like a better Titan, like to be like for the price. Like,
now, have you used the Titan on the tabletop yet?
I have used it like 6 times, I think. Most of those being in 10th edition so far. Because now the Titan is actually usable because GW, they actually just, for their points stuff, for the Forge World stuff, the Titans dropped like a bunch of points. The Warhound used to be 2,000 points exactly. I think the Reaver was 3,500, and I think the Warlord was like 5,500, if I remember correctly, which is just stupid overcosted. Which I get. You don't want to make the game like pay to win. Like, I get it. And they're just meant to be kind of cool, fluffy things that are technically playable via the rules of 40K. But now the Warhound is 1,100 points, and you can field it if you have a Chaos one, or you can just run a normal one as a Chaos one. You could just run it with a 900 point, like either Chaos Space Marine or any Imperium army. Like, it's super cool. Like, being able to actually, like, in a 2,000 point game, have a giant, Titan and have a 900 point army to play the objective is really nice now. It's actually like, I've actually won a game with a Warhound Titan. Like, that's something I could never have said in 9th edition.
So So as someone who kind of came in with 8th and is sticking around, how do you feel about the Primaris Marines versus, I'd say the OG, you know, but I guess the proper term is Firstborn.
Okay. When it comes to Primaris, the way they were introduced into the lore was stupid. Like, I'm just going to be quite frankly honest. They basically handled it in the worst way that they could have, like, from, like, a logistical point of view. Like, I get what they were trying to do, but what they should have done is they should have just said, oh, Gilliman's back. We're able, like, the gene seed over 10,000 years has kind of deteriorated. We can now update the gene seed for fresh recruits. Like,
I don't understand why they didn't do that.
Like, literally, that's just what they should have done, and they should have just, like, okay, now we're selling Space Marines at true scale, and they have new armor. Like, that's, like that's what it should have been. Like, in terms of models, I actually really like a lot of the Primaris stuff. They're very beginner friendly for new hobbyists. Them being a little bit plain Jane is actually like mostly to their advantage for modeling because you can do so much with them if you're creative. And they're very easy for someone new to like paint because they're so flat paneled. And you can make them not flat paneled if you want to, very, very easily.
Speaking of Primaris, not to interject too much, but one of the points of lore in the first big campaign that we're going to do on the channel is a station on a planet called Tenebrous Mundi. And the part of the lore is that there's an STC that was the parts of it that are still intact, primarily focus on like genetic engineering and that kind of thing. And it's rumored that Belisarius Call got a lot of the stuff he put into the Primaris Marines from this station.
That would be kind of a nice retcon. I like that. But kind of like going back a little bit, back to Firstborn Marines, I actually didn't like the Firstborn Marines, at least I liked them lore-wise, and I liked the way they look like in art, but I didn't like the way they looked in like in Dawn of War or on the tabletop. Like they looked a bit goofy.
They look
now
that
I've had 5 years of hobbying experience, like I find some of the kids have not aged well, and their bad aging does not kind of overpowers their charm. But some of those kits are just really charming. Most of the box dreads, I'm actually in the minority where I actually kind of really like Centurions. Like I think Centurions look pretty cool actually, and I hope we get like a Primarist version of them so they can kind of redo those kits, like so that people stop bitching. But the new Terminators that are meant to be like Primaris and Firstborn ambiguous, God, they look so good. Oh yeah, especially that autocannon. But generally, I really I like Firstborn Marines in doses. I'm very, very sad to see a lot of those kits go for a lot of people. However, like I'm a White Scars player, and like half of my like Forge World kits were just like I have like 16 Forge World Outrider bikes that I got off of an eBay deal and I painted up, and they are now useless. I cannot use them. I cannot field them. We're talking like $400 worth of models that like GW just like, and I don't have a problem with GW getting rid of kits. What I have a problem with is Games Workshop getting rid of kits and not having a plan to have a direct replacement, or at least like in the game, GW takes a stance. If you have the correct base size and this thing, like if you like, this can count as this. Like it doesn't matter what it's equipped with, like WYSIWYG, like doesn't matter. You can run this as this. Like I would not care. But considering how tournaments are run and how people play the game, and that's not how it's, GW is not taking a stance on that very soundly, other than a very superficial way, I'm not a fan. They did a great job with the Sternguard veteran, the new Sternguard veteran kits that are Primaris scale, but they're kind of ambiguous whether they're Primaris or Firstborn. They have a lot of Firstborn helmets, and they like that are modern and they look really cool. But they're like at the size of Primaris Marines. So you can run them as whatever, or you could just rebase your old Sternguard veterans or Vanguard veterans as Sternguard. Like, that's cool. That's how you do that. Not like, oh, we're just going to get rid of these kits, even though we already put them in the index and we're selling these kits up until the codex, even though the edition has already launched. Misleading people. That's just bad business practice, and that's just very shitty for people like me who had a lot of Firstborn kits for an army that they love.
Really not a fan of them just destroying the Firstborn.
I'm surprised they didn't do like another Civil War where like all the degenerating gene seed of like the Firstborn just cross back over to the Traitor Legions, and the Primaris or like the new, loyalist Space Marines. Would be kind of interesting.
And that'd be really fluffy. I mean, and then you could even say that all of the characters and stuff, they did cross the Rubicon Primaris and all that.
Because that also fixes how the Chaos Legions are still going about, because that bolsters all their ranks, from when they swapped sides all those years ago. So I thought that would have been the more logical way to handle that.
Well, the Chaos Marines, they've had people added to their ranks. Like, there's not every Chaos Space Marine is from the Heresy. Like, in fact, there's 99% of them probably aren't.
There's always some just going over.
But dudes in Terminator armor, or like basically any named character on the side of Chaos, yeah, they're dudes. They're dudes from the Heresy, which makes sense. However, when it comes to like traitors, speaking of traitors, I don't know if you guys know that much about the Arcs of Omen storyline recently with those books.
Pretty good bit.
But actually, they did. For the first time ever, we have, it is confirmed that there are traitor Primaris Marines now, and traitor Sisters of Battle. In fact, the entire, I can't remember the name of the sector, but basically, Angron and Khorne, yes, that Khorne, basically slashed a planet in half and broke like a mini Astronomicon. And when they did that, Khorne and Chaos was so embolstered that an entire Imperial sector of space turned to Chaos because there's so much excess warp energy like leaking in from the rift that it just like everything that was not the few Custodes, Grey Knights, or Sisters of Silence, every sentient being in that sector was named as they're fucking traitors, because they're just all went batshit. So now you can actually run I don't know if you can on tabletop. You probably can kit bash it, but now you have a lore justification that yes, they do exist. Traitor Primaris Marines and Traitor Sisters of Battle do exist, and I do really like this for flavoring.
Ooh, yeah, Traitor Sisters of Battle. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I do like that they kept the Custodes, the Grey Knights, and the Sisters of Silence clean. And they specifically specified everything except those. That was a nice touch.
Yeah, it was called the Murder Curse.
Yeah, thank you. I almost forgot what it was called. Correction, I did forget what it was called. But even the name of it is so 40K, the Murder Curse.
Yeah, it's so sad to me too that when Angron kind of exploded, Khorne gave him a moment of seeing the universe the way that Khorne does, and he knew peace, and then respawned.
It wasn't, relative to Angron, it was a moment, but it actually wasn't a moment. The entire time that he was dead for those 8 weeks, he felt bliss and saw the universe from Khorne's perspective.
Yeah, it's 8 weeks, 8 months, 8 days, and
now Angron Forever is basically because of how, which by the way, if you didn't pick it up from that Arcs of Omen bit, Khorne is by far and away the most powerful Chaos God at the moment. It's not even a contest. Before, with the Plague Wars, you could make an argument that it was Nurgle was the strongest for a while. But now, fuck that, with the garden getting burned by Gilliman and the Emperor and Khorne doing this, there is no fucking contest.
So much war. I mean, when you think about it,
it's just kind of cool to see the simple, badass chaos god just be, it's unambiguous. He's the strongest chaos god right now. It's kind of cool.
But maybe Tzeentch planned it that way.
Maybe Tzeentch did plan it that way, but Tzeentch really doesn't care who's strong at what time, really, ever. He just wants the great game to go on for eternity. Really.
How about Talva, the budding fist god?
Talva. That's the Eldar one, isn't it?
Nope, that is the god that has been.
It's the Tau one.
Yes, where all the Tau, they're like little flickering embers in the warp, but all their client races that are warp sensitive, especially humans, they believe so much in the Talva, which is the greater good, that they have produced a god.
Yeah, well, when we say god, it's probably more like a greater demon.
I mean, we're thinking, that's more like an Eldar god level. We're thinking.
I wouldn't even say that.
That sounds like what is that? Like a tulpa. Those Tibetan spirit things, where the more you believe in it, you actually manifest it into being, and the stronger it gets.
I would say Vashtor and Be'lakor are way closer to being a chaos god than Talva is.
True. But still,
so
you see
either one of them
Sun
would just bend Talva over and have a field day. But that's another thing.
Probably, yeah. But I mean, when you think about it too, though, it's awesome to see that Talva becoming a thing, and I'm a big Tau guy, so seeing them get their own chaos thing is awesome.
Yeah, it is kind of cool, and seeing Farsight kind of get tempted by the powers in the warp, kind of like it. Pretty dope, especially since he's red. It makes sense Khorne to be like, ooh, red, I want it.
So within the limitations, I guess, I guess it's weird because there's a strike right now for screenwriters and actors, but if Netflix, Hollywood, if anyone ever were to do a 40K adaptation, what sector would you want to see? Now, remember, everyone wants to say, huge battles, which would be cool, don't get me wrong, like Dune, but I feel like they messed that up. So, do you think it'd be better if they zoomed in or zoomed out?
They need to zoom way in. They need to have a particular storyline from the books that they want to follow. Then they got to pick it. And for in terms of adaptation, what would be the most cost effective and easy to do? It would be Eisenhorn, and it would be the one they would be least likely to screw up. The Horus Heresy would be more fit for a Marvel, when 40, we're talking a decade and a half, maybe 20 years from now, where 40K is way more mainstream than it is now, where they could do a Marvel movie kind of thing with the Horus Heresy. That's how they should do that kind of stuff. But for for just dipping their toes into making a TV show, that would be good, that a regular audience might be intrigued by. Eisenhorn, that's the way to go. Or just or just have a series called The Inquisitor or something like that.
See, I was thinking maybe with the way a lot of people are kind of leaning, it's almost like the 80s are making a comeback. I would go with a Rogue Trader. I wouldn't go
Rogue Trader would be pretty good too.
Yeah, Rogue Trader would be good, or me personally, what I think is really good is I think probably one of the better, cheaper things to make, especially just testing out, would be horror, because horror is pretty universal. You don't have to know a lot about the lore to be terrified, so I would go with a Space Hulk kind of thing. Because at the very end, they could find something that leads back to one of the chapters, and that kind of gets their interest,
This is kind of, this is a bit of a controversial opinion, I would say. And don't get me wrong, I like Henry Cavill. I think he would make a great actor in a 40K TV show. And I think but I think the community has put way too much, weight on Henry Cavill. like I'm like to the point where I'm afraid that if the show that he's working on does not end up being good, that like a huge portion of the Warhammer community are gonna get like blackpilled and like doomer about Warhammer. And I'm like, you guys are putting way too many eggs into one basket hope-wise. Like, if you want my honest opinion.
I see that, but I think they're like the Resident Evil community where they know they're never going to get it right, and that's okay. So like every show they come out, they just kind of take it as like some of the movies. The old Wes Andersons were okay. The Raccoon City, that was decent for what it was. The Netflix show was terrible, and we all know that.
But I feel like certain content creators are hyping up the Henry Cavill show, like being in the works, like way too much. They're getting people's hopes up way too much. Like, I think, like, you're setting Warhammer and like the rest of the community up for failure, I think, because if it doesn't turn out to be good, like what happened to the Halo show, we're gonna see what happens. Like, we're gonna see what's going on with like Halo fans right now going on with 40K, and that's something I do not want to see.
Well, especially with the newer fans. I mean, I think that the brand visibility that comes from any show, I mean anything, because we haven't really had anything like that in the community. I think that's going to bring some people in. So I think it'll be a net positive over time for new players, but at the same time, people that just jump in because, oh man, the Henry Cavill's going to be making this show, blah blah blah. Yeah, I think a lot of I say a lot. Some of the content creators out there are trying to make Henry Cavill into Superman for Warhammer.
Exactly. And I get why, but like we only have the one Henry Cavill, and if you put too much hype into him and you spoil it for everyone, like the backlash is gonna be not worth the lead up. Like, I'm just saying, like.
I'm glad you said this because I get to do a shameless, steal. That's what a lot of people, and myself, I doom and gloomed about it. I complained about it, about the Twisted Metal. The one clip they released, like, oh god, they've gone full Marvel dialogue. Everyone's all quippy. It's like, I want Twisted Metal Black, I want terrible, PTS, I want all this dark stuff. And then the show came out, and I watched it, and in the context of what they made it, it's great. I was like, that's why he's okay, cool. They did a really bad job of showing a preview for the show. I actually watched the show because I'm a big Twisted Metal fan. As some people on the podcast may know, I do play a lot of Gasland, so I'm a big Mad Max, Death Race, Twisted Metal, all that car combat stuff. So that show was absolutely amazing. I was like, oh, well, they got one right. I was like, oh man, that's insane. And so now you're starting to see a revival in Twisted Metal and in Gasland. So I think you're right. As long as we set the bar low and just be pleasantly surprised, I think it'll probably be the better option.
I mean, it is Henry Cavill. We don't have to set it down too low. The man's amazing. He's an actual treasure.
Just let him have fun.
Like Henry Cavill doesn't need the hype. He is the hype. That's kind of what I mean. Like,
I mean, the man, he is a custodian. He is a custodian. That's him. He's a golden god.
Now, there is also the thing about be careful what you wish for. So back in the day, we wish, people were like, oh, I wish this hobby, got more mainstream appeal and stuff like that. And that is a good thing. But don't forget what happened to D&D. I said, I played D&D for a while, and I swear, I've never seen a full episode of Critical Role. I could never get through a whole of it. The animated series, yeah, it's awesome. But the actual show, couldn't do it. But what Critical Role, and it's not their fault. I have to say that. It is not their fault. Matt Mercer and his crew really did nothing wrong. But what Critical Role did to D&D
has been detrimental.
Yeah, imagine that hitting your 40K.
I've been a DM, and the problem with Critical Role's impact on D&D is that every DM either wants to be or is expected to be like Matt Mercer, and it's just no one can do that. Like, Matt Mercer is he is one of the best English voice actors in the world. He is an experienced dungeon master who's been a D&D fan since he was a kid. So he's been doing D&D for fucking 30 years. No DM can live up to what Critical Role is.
So it's inappropriate, but I think it's a good analogy. Cover your ears, kids. But Critical Role was like the porn to D&D. If you do nothing but watch hours and hours of Critical Role, then you go into your first prom or your date and you think it's going to be like that. just be happy you're playing D&D. You know, like just be happy you're there. Exactly. Don't be like, well, you know, they did backflips. Also, like, look, man, these are professionals. These are paid professionals who've been doing this for years. You know, keep your anticipation. And you're exactly right.
And to be honest, like as a DM, I've fallen into this trap too multiple times. Like you put way too much expectation on yourself for things to be perfect, and it will never be perfect. Like that's
I think
at
people
the end
should
of the day.
take like the Stranger Things approach for D&D. Like it's just kids playing, and that's like, and they did. I want to say they did do like a Stranger Things thing where they just sat around and played D&D, and that was great.
See, I would like that. I think that. Call me weird, you know, I'm not creepy or anything, but I think that'd be a cool thing to see Henry Cavill do instead of like acting and stuff like that. I mean, obviously I want the guy to make money, it's his job, but I think it'd be fun just to watch the guy play some 40K, like actually see him and his interests
Warhammer.
Come out. Yeah,
Henry, if you're listening,
I unironically saw people giving shit about how he painted his custodies, and I'm like, dude, he does not have time to be like a good painter. Like,
sure, seen Robin Williams' orcs,
and even if his like paint job isn't the best, my first paint job was worse, just to be frank, and I'm a good painter now. So just give the dude time, like just let him enjoy being a Warhammer fan. Like this is his outlet. Don't ruin it for him just because you want to be like, well, actually.
Yeah, let him be Henry, not Henry Cavill. Let him just be Henry, the guy that plays Custodies.
Exactly.
Henry, if you're listening and you want to come on Quiet Order Podcast or Quiet Order Channel.
yeah.
Come on,
also,
brother.
I'm not very huge on the way the media has handled Henry Cavill being a nerd. They treat it as like, whoa, look, it's this. We can be like, oh, that's so weird that this hot like guy is like a geek and nerd, and he builds PCs and he plays this thing called Warhammer that has little plastic toys. Like that's so quirky and interesting. Like, and they do it, and you can see it on these shows, and it pisses me off. And I'm like, you clearly don't give a shit that he cares about this thing. You're just doing it to sensationalize and be like,
they sniffed that Big Bang Theory money.
This guy. You know? Exactly. Literally, exactly.
Since Contacts came out, us, the nerd and geek community, we actually look a little bit better now that we're not wearing bifocals.
Oh, I do. Oh,
God damn.
I mean, I've got Coke bottle glasses on right now, so.
Overkill.
No, like I said, I think it goes back to what we were talking about in the previous podcast, where it's just, you know, the gentleman's agreement, or gentlewoman, as it were, you know, agreement that comes to the tabletop is you don't have to try and out nerd each other, but you also don't have to like try and out machismo or out like alpha the other either. Just show up and then have a good time. And just I think it's more the relaxation, but that's not just for 40K. Like I said, I know I broached the topic, but there's so many. I feel like, and this is just me, you know, I'm just theming here, or guessing. I feel like there's a lot of similarities between what happened to D&D and what's going to happen to 40K. I'm just saying it. So like I said, just be careful what you wish for. Like I said, and my biggest thing is I'm not an elitist with D&D. Have I played it for a while? Sure. Do I think people should play whatever they want? Yes. My biggest thing is look at 5th edition. Look at the first couple books that came out, and then look at the recent ones. Just look at the cover art. Don't even open it. Just look at the cover art, and you see they're going for a lot more like slice of life, you know. Sorry, I dropped my drink. So it's going for like a slice of life
soundboard.
Almost like a Sims. And there's nothing wrong with playing the Sims or a slice of life simulator. Like, you do you, boo. You play whatever D&D you want, but don't force everybody. When they started making rules that changed everybody else's games, I'm like, oh, come on now. Like when they started retconning races, like, well, that's racist. I was like, yes, it literally is racist because they're racist. Like, these are.
I mean, I'm kind of indifferent to that change specifically. Like, but like the thing, this is kind of a bit of a controversial take on the D&D community as a whole. But a lot of people who play D&D have a bad habit of there's a group of people that I like to call tender queers that are people who like to trauma dump on other people. They want to make all of their traumas and all of their personal issues like dump it on everyone else and make it all of their problems and be like, well, I'm just being creative and expressing this through Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm like, no, you're just kind of being a dick to your DM and to all the other people you're playing with.
I said that the last one. I said they turned it into like Build-A-Bear, so they got to like build their own alter identity. What I hated was they turned D&D to free therapy. Now, I'm not against people getting therapy. You know, obviously I'm a veteran, super important.
Exactly.
You know, get the help you need. But your free game of D&D, or more importantly, for a while I did it for free. I was like, I'm never going to charge. It's just supposed to be fun. I quickly realized why you should charge, because it keeps out a lot of like people you may not want. Like, okay, now I'll charge a very small amount, but just enough to kind of pay me for the stuff I put into it. And then it made me even mad. I was like, these people are paying to be here, and you're trying to hijack this as a free therapy session. Like, get the help you need by all means, but this ain't it. I am 100% not a licensed therapist. I was like, it's not your therapy session. This is just supposed to be, you know,
it's supposed to be a fun game.
I love my brother to death. I DM for him sometimes. He's a great guy. He really is. But he has a certain kind of mind. He's a very Diablo style hack and slash. Let me do my calculations, you know, kill the monster, get the loot. And that's great. You know, I was like, there's D&D games for that. So I built his D&D game like that. Some people like more narrative style. Me, I love like more swashbuckler style, Pirates of the Caribbean, Three Musketeers, you know, jump on a table, you know, how can I interact with the environment? Can I kick a chair over for cover? Like, I like that type of like swashbuckling style. Some people want a pure narrative romance tale. Some people, everyone has their own different style. That's fine. Just find the DM for you. Don't try and create that in a game and force other people to be. And that's the biggest thing, is people who wanted to be the main character. I was like, that's not how this works. It's like, you're not the main character.
As an actor with an ego, I've fallen into that trap too. So those out there listening, you don't have to feel that bad, especially when you're a teenager. Like, you're probably gonna do that at some point. But when you're an adult, and you have to I've seen a bunch of friend groups and D&D groups like legitimately like tear themselves apart from the inside out, and their D&D group basically breaks apart their friend group. So many times. Tiki probably knows exactly what I'm talking about here. Because people in Dungeons and Dragons, and I've seen it a little bit in 40K too, where people are basically making all of their personal, as he put it, they're basically turning it into a 3 therapy session, and they're not dealing with their emotions and all of their external problems from the game healthfully, and they're putting it on all these other players that have to deal with it, and that shit builds resentment and tension, and that shit will tear apart friend groups. Eventually, it will, especially if you don't stop.
No, I've seen it. Yeah,
he's exactly right. I remember one time, the post may still be up there. It's on Reddit. I asked what I thought at the time was a simple question, and I know I am sarcastic and humorous, but I was actually, and I had said, I was like, hey, no sarcasm, I'm actually serious, because I kept seeing these things like LGBTQ friendly, and then one I saw was LGBTQ only. I was like, well, it seems like it goes against the guidelines. Like, whatever, not my problem. It's like not my thing, whatever. But everyone kept saying that, and then I posted one that didn't say LGBT friendly. Someone's like, so do you not accept LGBTQ people? I was like, what? Huh? I was like, no. I was like, anyone can. I was like, you can apply. I was like, I'm not going to make you fill out. Now they make you fill out this huge application. It's worse than a job application. You know, I was like, no, just answer a couple questions just to see if I'm the right DM for you. I'm like, well, I need to know if you're LGBTQ friendly. I was like, I'm not angry.
Friendly.
That's my question. I was like, have you ever? And I posted something. I was like, everything always says LGBTQ. I was like, has anyone ever posted like this is LGBTQ hostile? I was like, I've never seen that post anywhere. Everyone's like, no, they would never. I was like, I just don't understand why that has to be like a prerequisite. It's like, no, I'm friendly towards everybody. You know, I was like, now, and same thing. I was like, but my characters are my characters. And that's something I ran into in a game. Somebody wanted a relationship with a character. I was like, okay, well, I'm sorry. I was like, when I drafted this whole massive world, you know, I was like, this character is happily married to this person. Like, well, I want that character. I was like, okay. I was like, well, you know what? You can roll for it. I was like, okay. I was like, ooh, and now they're upset and think you're weird. I was like, oh, why am I weird? Because I'm this? I was like, no, because you just try to seduce a happily married person, regardless of the gender. I was like, stop.
and let common sense rule.
Yeah, like, and read the room, like, just generally, like, I know, like, D&D and, like, all of the, like, we talk about nerd stuff, and there's gonna be, like, you know, I have autism. I'm literally like on the autism spectrum. I get it. I have social anxiety. Like, I'm not the best at reading a room. But there's a certain point where you just gotta be like, the DM keeps mentioning this thing. Maybe I should be paying attention closer instead of derailing the entire party, and making and just derailing an entire session for 2 hours and making it about me when my DM is also trying to have fun and like run a game. Like, that's for other people. That's something that a lot of people just don't do and like just can't read the room about. Like, and as a DM, this is something, as you could probably tell, I have personally had to deal with so many times, so much so that I have a fundamental rule. I do not allow evil characters in my game, because every single time I have allowed a chaotic neutral, aka someone who wants to play an evil character but just wants to be like, oh well, I'm just chaotic. Like,
They just want to
do what I want. They just want to be Deadpool. And that's, you're still an evil douchebag. Like, you're still being a dick. Like I just don't allow evil characters in my campaign, because I had too many players erode that trust. Where like, nope. Even if we talk about it, I do not. It's just every single time it ends up with you going off and being a dick to the rest of the party, and basically, and essentially like derailing my campaign for times and for just to be evil for no reason. And here's the spoiler alert for people who don't understand how alignments work. Being evil does not necessarily mean you have to be a douchebag. I know it's a crazy idea that people just can't
Strahd is the shining example of that. Strahd's a great character. He's a good guy.
Oh yeah, he's a monster. He's absolutely a literal like evil monster, but he's polite. He's courteous. That's part of what makes him scary.
That ties into Fulgrim for me. I mean, 40K.
Like with your part, like here's the thing. An evil character can feel love. An evil character can care about their party. And like, let's say something like someone goes behind your back and betrays your party. What you could do as an evil character, you could literally like, outside of like when the rest of the party isn't around, you can go and like kill this character, be like, no one messes with my friends except me, and just kill the shit out of them. And yeah, like that's kind of how you play more of like an evil like maverick, not just being a dick to your party and stealing their stuff. Like, I've also had problems with that. Like, do not be a murder hobo. I understand, like, some people like to play games that way, but, like, for D&D, just don't be a murder hobo. Don't
or have
just
it be
stab a guy 'cause
established
you
that
feel
you're
like
gonna
it.
play a campaign as murder hobos.
Yeah, see, so I've had like over 10 years experience, and not just D&D. I play a bunch of other, run a whole bunch of other games too. So the way I run it is I actually pull my background from being in the military. One of the many jobs I had probably one of my favorite jobs, was a training instructor. And the way we do our tabletops and our training exercises is they're what we call quicksand, where this is your world. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So you can do whatever you want, but the world is going to react to you, and it's going to hurt really bad. So that's the way I was like, if you want to be an evil character, that's fine. I cannot say, and I'm not punishing you or the character, but I cannot say how long you're going to live. Because if you start stealing stuff from the party might turn your ass in at the next town. Or let's say you accidentally kill someone, you move on to the next town, there's going to be a wanted poster. And the longer you play, the higher up that. I was like, this is just how the world would react.
Insert Talladega Nights. Don't you stick that knife in your leg.
But yeah, so now the way I'd react to those people who try and make a therapy session, what I've offered those people, and it worked once, it didn't work the other time I tried it, so you know, your mileage may vary, is like, look, you sound like you need like a one-on-one DM session. Now I'm not trying to like get extra money out of them. I'd even offer, I was like, yeah, you know, it'd be a much reduced rate, you know, I'm not going to try it because I'm not a therapist and I don't want to be your therapist, but it seems like maybe you do better if you were just DM'd one-on-one, you got to make your own decision. Because some people, there is a stereotype, you know, I played a lot of games. Some people want to be their own main character. Yeah, I'm like, and that's fine.
They just want to be the protagonist.
And that's totally fine. I was like, my recommendation is go out, find a DM you like, you know, look at their styles, watch their YouTube videos, see a DM you like, and then pay them to just do like a choose your own adventure book, there's nothing wrong with it. That's why they've been around forever. They're awesome. They're fun. I love them. But you need to be your own character, because otherwise you're just making other people suffer. So, but that's my way. I let people be evil. I'm just like, just sign this like, it's almost like a difficulty setting on a game. Like, go ahead and sign it. This is for experienced players only. You're likely going to die and lose your stuff, but by all means, have fun with it. And so I've had evil characters, because alignment is never set in stone. I always feel I'm a redemption guy. So I was like, yeah, I've had evil characters become good. I've had good characters become evil because certain stuff happens. I get that. The people who want to start off and be like that, like, I just want to kill everything. I was like, go ahead. They never make it past the first town. They look at me. I was like, what would you do if someone killed half your village? Like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. Or they don't think like that and they just get upset and leave.
The weird thing is, I find that there are actually players that just can't wrap their mind about, like, what do you mean they want to fight back after I just punched them in the face? Like they can't wrap their mind around that D&D is not a Call of Duty session. Like,
or those are the guys that play too much Skyrim on the easiest setting.
That too.
So here's the controversial opinion. This probably might get me canceled, so I might get tossed off y'all's things. Hopefully not. But I play mine with, I don't know how to say this without like getting banned, with, I guess, the context. What do I say? This biasness, or almost, not really racist. It has nothing to do with the race, but towns hate adventurers. So everywhere they go, because you got to think about, most adventurers don't succeed. So these people come in, buy up all their stuff, so they may be hungry next year, piss off some animal, generally don't kill it, and then the animal comes out of the dungeon, and it's like, I know what town you came from. Oh, you came from Lake Town, just like in The Hobbit, it went and it burned down Lake Town. So most adventure parties, you got to think in the grand scheme of the world, to get killed. So all they do is just stir up shit in the woods and goblin caves that come and take it out on the village.
They're just shit mercenaries.
Yeah, so my villages always hated my party until they proved themselves. And somebody was like, especially like if you walked into it, and I actually did like, everything wasn't necessarily diverse. My blacksmiths were generally dwarves. I don't know, call it what you want, man. Or sometimes, if there was a goblin cave nearby, they may not like a half orc because he kind of looks like a goblin. I was like, I don't just tell you, man, you kind of look like a goblin. Like these are peasants. They're not exactly, that's my problem, is people try and take modern sensibilities. I'm not saying you need to be like terrible, not at all, but people try to take modern sensibilities of people who live to the ripe age of like 80 now, who have like dental care and education, and try and put that on like peasants with flying dragons. I was like, they're not really going to be the most like
reasonable people,
or civilized or reasonable people. I was like, you have to remember that within reason.
They are literally bumpkins. Like, what do you else do? No, I agree with you there. Actually, I kind of run a similar ship with my games.
And another good tactic for the DMs out there, I run this really cool campaign that I love. I do it in Ghost of Saltmarsh. And the way I said it, I literally, just like everybody else, I steal absolute Grand Theft Auto this shit from Tolkien, is I impose race and class restrictions on my party. So the way I do my Ghost of Saltmarsh is I say, I pick something, I call it the minute races. And what I mean by that is miniature, I don't mean in an offensive way, but you can choose to be a dwarf, a gnome, or a halfling. And there's a whole lore reason behind it. But what happens is you're kind of like sent to the Ghost of Saltmarsh. It's this whole big piracy campaign. You go up against the Kraken. It's really cool. But I impose a class and race restriction because I think that binds the party together just a little bit. If you're able to pick anything you want, you show up with a half lizard, a half angel, and like some weird like werewolf. Like, what do you guys have together? But I was like, hey, you guys are all part of this.
Yeah, that's something else I've noticed with players, is that sometimes like you should, as a DM, you should put limits and you should impose restriction on what the players can do for character customization.
Because it's your D&D game. You can run your game however you want. But I was like, now if you'd like to play in my world, which is, because I was like, I'm your DM. So the only thing is I have to say in the setting, I was like, I have the setting all built for you. There's just we talked about the social contract. Same thing. I was like, here's the social contract. You belong to this ancient organization. Because what it is, it's basically like Vikings. So the miniature race were the old descendant of, at that time, those types of Vikings. And they're being called back up to try and bring peace to the seas. You have to take out, like my pirates in the world. I think it was pretty cool. They're were-rats. Imagine a sea battle, because it's like a slaving pirate armada, but they're were-rats. Imagine like rats crawling over all the lines and sails. Like, what good sailors they would be. So you have the were-rat pirates. You have the Kraken cult coming up. You have all these like inner wars between kingdoms and all this other kind of merchants. And it's like, hey, we need to bring back these Vikings who are really good at solving problems, one way, and you guys need to set these seas straight. I was like, now that's what binds you. You know, it's very Viking themed, but you're all going to be, and like the dwarves were the fighters. The hobbits were more like the sailors, and the gnomes were like more the navigators, and more the scientific like engineers and the shipwrights. So everyone had those kind of slots. It's like basically like any game. Which way do you want to play? Do you want to play as like the tech character, the fighter character, you know, or the skill based character? So I kind of built it off that way, and it ran really smoothly. At first, I got a lot of complaints like, "Why can't I be this?" I'm like, "Come on, man, just pick from the list." And at first, people were upset, but I ran a couple campaigns, and it ran pretty well.
But yeah, like when it comes, just a little bit of a side tangent here for a second. And I'm queer, so I can kind of speak on this. Furries, I gotta be real with you guys. Like, I get it, but, and this is a big but here. Not every nerd thing should be your outlet for being a furry, and that includes D&D, and that includes Warhammer. I'm sorry. Like, some people, just it's off-putting, and you're putting a bad name for other people like you, and you're just playing into a stereotype. Not every aspect of your existence should have to play in, like, being a furry should not be your entire personality.
See, I've had a couple, but I've never had a bad experience. Maybe the ones I had. Sorry, maybe the ones I had were just super chill, but I never had an issue with that. I see that a lot in the community, but that's one thing I've never had. I find that kind of weird.
The same. I mean, I've seen it a couple of times, but it's been like, I don't know if it's like I just generally give off the vibe of, hey,
a few stories for another day.
Yeah, we'll get into those at some point. I guess I just give off a vibe of, listen, I don't care who you, like what you do. I don't care what color you are. I don't care who you're attracted to. I just don't. I mean, you're here to hang out. Great. I'm like Tiki was saying, I'm friendly. I'm not. I don't feel the need to list all the things that I'm friendly to. That just kind of says, well, I'm unfriendly against these other things.
So, here's one thing that'll put me in the bad point. The first time I saw this, I laughed because I thought it was a joke, and it wasn't. Now, so you keep mentioning, your things. So let me try again. Veteran. I go to the VA, not just for my own healthcare, but I go there to help out, so like that. A lot of my brothers and sisters, did come back severely wounded. Luckily, I still have all my limbs. Some people don't, and I get that. I truly do. But the first time I saw a wheelchair D&D character, and I read a legit article about making dungeons like handicap accessible, I literally think I almost pissed myself. I thought it was a hilarious Onion article. Someone's like, no, it's legit. I was like, wait, what? And I was like, yeah, you can replace a limb. And I was like, okay, cool. You're going the really cool route where some role-playing games have something called scars and
I'm not handicapped. I'm handy-capable.
Well, yeah, some have it where you have scars, but you also have boons. So it's like if you want to take, to get +1 in this skill set, you have to also take a scar, which is like I'm terrified of spiders or I'm terrified of water. For every good thing, you take a bad thing. It balances your character up, prevents Mary Sue's and Gary Sue's.
That's something I would actually really like to see. Like have a player be like, I want to play a wheelchair-bound character in D&D.
But see, I was just about to say, it can be great.
That is interesting. That is cool. I would love to play around with that.
I had a master blaster team.
I won't solve every problem for you, but I will give you plenty of tools to be creative because I'm a rule of cool DM.
So I think a half-orc barbarian with a goblin wizard, and they were like a master blaster team. And the goblin wizard, he was old and decrepit. He couldn't walk. He walked on his hands, so the barbarian carried him. It was by far the funniest and also tactically sound thing I've ever seen. I loved it.
So they did the fastball special, huh?
Oh, no, he didn't throw him. He just rode on his shoulder, so the barbarian's out there swinging axe while he's slinging fireballs from his shoulder. It was absolutely awesome.
Okay, somebody out there, please play a wheelchair-bound artificer that is trying to improve his wheelchair so that he is able to go in all the dungeons.
and then is eventually able to turn into Iron Man. Like, that would be sick as fuck.
That's fine. Like I said, that I don't mind, but if people are like, well, I'm just as good as all the other Avengers, like, man, no party is gonna pick you. I was like, if you showed up, if I'm trying to build a party and you showed up in a wheelchair and you're not like an artificer, I'm not trying to be, in real life, that's different, you know, because there's laws and we're more civilized. But in a place where I might get, you know, killed, skinned, and raped, and hopefully in that order, you know, like in a dungeon, I'm not going to pick the person in a wheelchair to cover my back.
But if you were like an Aarakocra or something, where you had like wings, where you could like move yourself with the draft, like that you in your wheelchair, like be creative, like that.
There's
kind
so
of stuff.
many good
like,
ways to make it work. I mean, it's an awesome concept. But at the same time, I feel like that, like we're dancing around this general topic of, oh, well, we've got to make it okay for everybody. Well, here's the thing, you know, much love to all the communities, but life is just not okay for everybody. You got to figure out the way that you got to fix it for yourself.
Here's my thing: D&D is accessible. It's a free download. That's all you need.
Yeah. Well, like. Not everybody in the world is going to be your friend. You're not going to get along with everyone. Not every play group for D&D or Warhammer is going to be like a good fit for you. Like that's just kind of the truth of things. Not everyone who happens to like the same hobby as you is going to be your friend. Like that's the sad truth of the world. And trying to force something that just isn't going to work. Like there's plenty of people in my local play group that as people, like I just don't like them. I don't like their vibe. I don't like how they treat other people. I don't like how they treated me. So, but I'm not going to say anything, and I'm not going to like kick them out of the group. I'm not going to play with them. I'm not going to be around them. If they have a problem with me saying the word retard when I'm on the spectrum, and they want to, and they really have that much of a problem with it, then they can go somewhere else because I'm not going anywhere. Like, you're just being a buzzkill for no reason. And if you have a problem with me saying that, then go somewhere else. Like that's to be frank. Like
yeah, with that, I think it goes to the social contract. Like in my games, from my experience, because I also have done a lot of medical stuff, first responders like that. So when I describe injuries, I'm like, they're pretty gruesome, but they're logical. And I always, again, the way I'm not trying to hype mine, I promise I'm not selling a DM service, but when I do mine, like if you get hit in the arm, like that's gonna affect your character. Same thing with the enemy, you know, and the enemy's smart too. Like the first time someone launches a spell, even goblins would be like, hey, get the asshole waving his hands. Like that's the guy you want to shoot. Clearly, as he just set, you know, Jim Bob, the other goblin, on fire. But the way I play is very gruesome. When you kill someone, I mean, it's very violent and stuff like that. So a lot of people have trouble with that. I'm like, okay, the trick is a session zero. And I think 40K and a lot of other games can benefit from some type of session zero.
Yeah,
you sit down,
that's something.
Like, what kind of game are we expecting? Because you hear it in MG talks all the time about this competitive stuff. Be like, hey man, what kind of game are we having? Because I used to do this. Like, are we having that thing where I make a mistake and it's cool, you'll let me get it back, I'll let you do it too? Or are we playing strictly by the rules, which is sort of cool?
Or are you gonna be a dick about things so that neither of us can have fun?
Well, look at
like
chess. Chess is a game where you make a mistake, you take your finger off the piece, there are no takebacks, and that's okay because everybody knows that about chess. Same thing about poker. You play 5-card draw, like, oh, I didn't mean to put that much money in the pot. You try and take a chip out of a pot, depending where you are in the world is what caliber bullet you're gonna catch the chest cavity, right? Like there's rules, you know. In 40K, set like, hey, are we playing solely by the rules? Or we chill? Exactly.
Well, I would say most people, especially for casual games, like most people for war, and even at tournaments, like from what I've heard. But
some people don't have casual games.
Most people, like for Warhammer, like as a whole, like allow takebacks and are generally pretty friendly and allow people to make mistakes because it's a very complicated game and people are going to make mistakes, and trying to get like a gotcha moment is just sucks for you, and it would suck if the opponent did that to you as well. Like it sucks for them and it sucks for you. There's no reason for it. So.
And I think a lot of people agree with that publicly, but when they play, it's a whole different world. You know, that's when I feel like come out like, well, I could take them on that, and that'll let me win. And I think that's the thing is, we say casual game like it's a universal language. Like, just don't be a dick.
That's an aspect of the hobby that we do have to preserve. That's something that has to be fought for and actively maintained, of just general, like, good, like, friendly etiquette between like people in the hobby, like, and people who play Warhammer. That's something that just should just fundamentally, like, if you're not willing to be kind, if you're gonna be a dick, like, maybe this is not the place for you.
Yeah, like, that's one of the big things that we've tried to really instill in everything we're doing in Quiet Order. It's like, when you're doing things with us, if you're hanging out with us, if you're playing games, even between us, I mean, we have this, I mean, we keep saying the social contract or the gentleman's agreement. It's not going to be a thing where, oh, well, you know, this wasn't discussed or whatever. We're not going to let somebody just run over somebody or disrespect somebody. That's not what this is about. We're here to have fun. We're here to play games and just, you know, have a good time. Don't bring all of your baggage into it. Go to therapy, not D&D session.
Yep. So I know I kind of stole this and tilted it towards D&D, but to kind of bring it back towards 40K, here's my question for y'all who stuck around past 8th, which I didn't. I tried to come back in 9th. I really did, because I heard there was a narrative campaign. I can't tell you how excited I got. Like, I was really sitting there with Genestealer Cold. I was like, oh, this is so cool. I'm going to make my own cold. This looks awesome. But I could never find a game. So my question to you who played more 40K than me is, it seems like everyone gets in via the lore, you know, in the Black Library books. So why aren't narrative campaigns as popular or get as much spotlight as the competitive scene?
I think it has a lot to do with the fact that the competitive scene is so out there, and people tend to treat it like an esport almost, where they're
exact thing. I was just about to say that. Yeah,
T-sport.
I think because a lot of 40K YouTube channels that cover like the game aspect of 40K also kind of like they focus I wouldn't say like for Mordian like this is like a problem on his part, like really anyone's. It's like too many channels focus on Warhammer as a competitive game and not as just like, you know, just a fun hobby, like I would say. Mostly like I would say just like we as the community should make more of a concerted effort to do narrative campaigns.
I agree. I mean, that's one of the big things that we're going to be doing with the UO. Like, we're doing a huge narrative thing, and I'm not sure exactly what it's going to look like just yet, but the hope is that we'll have content creators all over taking part in this campaign, where say, you know, just for example, say Mechanicus and Guard and Space Marines, Tyranids, those are all going to feature strongly in the campaign. And, you know, Genestealer Cult, of course. And somebody like Mordian, who's a big Guard guy, and he's got a Tau army, and he's got some Tyranids, or somebody, you know, could come play Tyranids. Say that MG wanted to make a video in our campaign thing. Well, yeah, just jump in, you know? I mean, like the whole, I don't remember what exactly the big campaign, 10th launch campaign was, where it was the, you kind of like phone in your results and whoever wins, and the Tyranids won. But building a group narrative, not just a gaming group narrative, but an overarching narrative that people can come and interact with. That's just something that it's sadly lacking right now, but I feel like it's very important. So that's one of the big things that we're going to do with the Tenebrous Mundi campaign. We're going to be doing battle reports, of course. We're going to be doing we're actually going to be doing the lore. Block and I'll probably do like some voice acted lore bits from different perspectives. Just doing it up as big as we can, just to give this framework out to say, hey, listen, you know, play it competitively, but you can play under the same narrative, and whoever wins or whoever loses, let us know, and that'll be in the narrative. And by the end, we'll have like a novella of what happened in this battle from so many different perspectives.
So, well, I'm sorry, go ahead, Block.
Yeah, if you mind, let me get this thought out, just because it's a carry on from something earlier. I think the reason why you put it perfectly, is that like people treat a 40K like almost like an esport, and it's kind of like a wider issue with gaming, especially like video games right now, where I don't know where this came from. Where like I think it's like streaming culture, where like streamers keep like pushing like competitive play for everything that they do, and just the competitive scene for anything is such a minority, and with every person trying to push the competitive scene, and let's be honest, like 99.9% of us are never going to be able to pursue a competitive career in anything. Why are we so heavily focused on it? Like, I don't understand. Like, it's like, I think that it's part of the reason why modern gaming is not as fun, because everyone is a sweaty tryhard almost. Like, and I'm guilty of this too. Like, and anyone else who's played Overwatch, like, and I would say like 40K, Mordian, like he kind of like, I did a super chat kind of bringing this up like a few weeks ago, and he kind of like, I think he kind of put the perfect cap on it, where 40K is like behind like modern like video games by a few years, and just now Warhammer is starting to get into that mindset of like everything has to be competitive, everything's competitively focused, everything needs to be perfect for streaming and like esports kind of thing. Like, when, let's be honest, that's not fun for most people. Even though a lot of us want to do that, that's not really fun. But you know what everyone almost has fun with? Like a narrative campaign. Like, I can't really think of any 40K fan that once like even the competitive ones that have like played through a narrative campaign didn't like playing the narrative campaign more than a tournament. So for the community to put such a focus on competitive play, I think it's going to hurt 40K and the way the game plays in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, and I think one of the big things, you said it really well, like streaming culture, it's really fun to sit and watch somebody really enjoy a game. And with the competitive scene, I mean, you've got guys like Play on Tabletop or Tabletop Titans. They're really good. And watching them just be able to navigate the game and enjoy their competitive play because they're that good. But that comes from playing the narrative campaign with their friends. I mean, like Titans, I talked to them a little bit, and their whole thing was they were just a gaming group, and then they started making videos, and now they're huge. But when you get granular with it to the day-to-day, your person-to-person thing, a narrative campaign can kind of cover over, but I think the term's been kind of overused lately, but like a skill issue, where you say, oh, if we're playing competitive, then, all these rules, rules as written, not rules as attended, whatever. Yeah, there's no room for the easy flowing fun. Oh, well, I see you move that there, and that's really going to put you in a bad position. You don't want to do that. Where if somebody in a competitive scene does that, then they're being too much. They're giving advice when it's not asked for, blah, blah, blah. But in a narrative game, so you're teaching each other. It's cooperative instead of competitive. And you have to learn to play cooperatively before you can play competitively with, good faith, I think.
All right, so let me climb where it's uncomfortable and sit on my fence. So I have an idea about this, and hear me out. So I think Warhammer 40K is perched in a precarious spot. So you have to remember, I should take it back. A lot of 40K is played at local friendly game stores. There's also Magic and some other stuff going on. So I think 40K finds itself in the middle between two extremes. Either it goes full competitive, it'll lean towards Magic the Gathering and, like we said, T-sports instead of esports. Because we talked earlier, I think like last podcast, about Magic. I got into Magic for the narrative. Sounds lame, but my deck was super thematic. It was merfolk and artifacts because they dive down and pick up artifacts. I thought it made sense and it was cool. Most people don't play narrative. They get this next booster, they tear it apart, put the best cards forward, and that's cool. That takes skill. I respect it, but it's not narrative, and that's okay. Versus if 40K leans full narrative, we talked about it earlier, they may go into the D&D realm where they'll start becoming emotional hostages of people who need free therapy and, why can't I have this type of Marine? Why can't this look like this? And either extreme is going to hurt the hobby. So in my opinion, but it's a guy who doesn't play 40K anymore, so please take that with, I said, margarita style salt. Stay the course and stay in the middle. You lean either extreme, it's gonna hurt your hobby. Now, if you want a game,
I don't know if I agree, but I think that is a very great point. I think. Go on.
Yeah, because Magic used to be narrative. Like you go back to like Tempest and some other stuff. It used to come like the rule book that come with each big deck. It had a great story and like the art and all the quotes tied into the characters from the books. It was phenomenal. And then it just went competitive, and there's nothing wrong with that. That sells cardboard cards. I get it. You do you, boo. Whatever you want, that's fine. But my recommendation is what I've always said is find a game that matches what you want. I love the narrative parts of 40K, but it was too competitive. That's why I went back to D&D. But that's why I also got into Fallout Wasteland Warfare, because it was both. You had crunchy tactical combat where when you make a mistake, it's gonna hurt, but you weren't just out there just fighting random armies. You collected stuff, you picked up scrap, and you came back and you built your own settlement with it. I was like, there you go. And you leveled up your characters as you went. I was like, that's what I'm talking about. That's legit. That's narrative and crunchy tactical combat. I want both. I kind of want both sides of that. You can do that in 40K, but we talked about that. You got to have that gentleman's agreement. Like I said, that session 0, but for Warhammer 40K. I think, in my opinion, again, I'm not a 40K player, so you guys do what you want, but I think starting gamer groups, kind of like what we have here, is the best way to go. Start up local groups and be like, hey, we're really here. We're not going to wear jerseys and sell coaching services. What we're here is like, hey, we like to play more narrative-focused games. If you want that side, come over here and play with us. And kind of that way you have that agreement before you go forward. Like, yeah, this is a chill narrative event. I think that's probably the better way to go if you do it that way.
Yeah, that's fair. Like when it comes to I have a problem with my local play area because my local play area with 40K are super sweaty because we have a local grand tournament every year in this area, and we have a lot of older 30 people who play Heresy and 40K, and a lot of Titan owners. So we have a lot of hardcore competitive players who have been around for a long time, and they take the game way too seriously sometimes.
I think almost 30K it's more geared to that though. I mean, that's the game if you really want to get down into the detail of the competition of it and get really granular. I mean, that's 30K.
See, I don't like the lore, but I like the game style of 30K. It seems almost more like Bolt Action, where everything is more mirrored and universal. Like, hey, that guy looks like he's a bolter. That's probably a bolter. Hey, my guy is a bolter. Oh, we both know what each other's weapons do. Hey, this is kind of cool. We're more evenly matched.
Yeah, I hate WYSIWYG on principle. I despise it. I think
that's important to Bolt Action.
Yeah,
that's like a hard, fast rule.
Yeah, I understand why WYSIWYG exists, but at the end of the day, I think if it fits the general silhouette, if it's on the right bait size, and you basically talk with your opponent before the game starts about what this is, what it's supposed to be, I feel like that's how 40K should be run. I hate WYSIWYG on principle, and I hate that people have to remodel their models or have to magnetize instead of just paint what they want to paint.
So we had a conversation about that, I think, about painting bases last time. So I'd like to talk more about this with you if you're down for it, friendly. So because I feel like that you're exactly right, but I feel like that's more the extreme of people. It has to be on the right base. I don't really care about that, but it's just like when we talk about a model has to be painted for competition. What really delineates painting? Same thing here with WYSIWYG. What do you mean really means what you see is what you get? To me, when I go up, a good example, I used to run Stormtroopers, and sometimes I wanted to use their hotshot volley guns, so sometimes I wanted to use their flamethrowers, so I just modeled them with both. Or if I don't want to pay for the flamethrowers, I put flamethrower tanks on them, but I also gave them a last gun. So it'd be like, hey, my character, I tell them at the beginning of the game, they're just running last guns, they're right here. But what I don't like to see is someone who's like, hey, And these guys are all going to be heavy flamers, but they're running them instead as like missile launchers. I'm like, what? There's no missile launcher on that character. How can I look at him and know he's a missile launcher? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's when I build my Tau. Like I generally overgun them because I go ahead and I even will, especially with like my Shadow Sun, I kit bashed her guns and combined them to the point that, hey, listen, it's there. It doesn't look like what you think, but the GW plastic that delineates this rule is on the model. And crisis suits, I mean, I'll put a couple of missile racks on them, and then I'll have like I double up my burst cannons, like especially for my commander, like the Cold Star commander. I always take the relic burst cannon and a second burst cannon. So I took those two and kind of conglomerated them into almost like a Gundam arm weapon, where he's holding that across his body, but then he has other weapons too.
So I went to the other extreme where I'm like, yeah, as long as you have it on the model somewhere, because I ran into it once and I was not a fan. I was playing at a guard player who was actually playing as like Chaos Legion or what have you, or like cultist, and he had I think it was a Wyvern. Yeah, he had a Wyvern like tucked in the back, but he never shot it. I was like, okay. What he didn't tell me, it was on the paper and I read it and I just totally forgot about it. So it is on me, and I gave him that. I was like, fine, it's on me, my tactical mistake. But he was running it as a Lehman Russ. But he purposely kept it in the backfield, didn't say anything. And at the very last, he ran it up, and he had a main battle tank at the end of the game. I was like, oh, I thought that thing was an artillery piece. Like, no, it shows on the paper.
But that's kind of what I mean when I say like fitting the general silhouette. Like, I feel like it does, like the weapon does not have to be exact, but I feel like the actual model should be like fit like the rough silhouette of what it like should expect. Like, if it's a Lehman Russ, it should be like a tank. Like, it should probably be a plastic Lehman Russ. Doesn't matter what gun barrel it is, as long as it's generally long and it's on the top. Like,
yeah, don't try to make a ghost keel Lehman Russ and we're good.
I actually modeled for disadvantage one time, and someone said I couldn't use these models. So in my army, which were naval pioneers, I don't like Ratlings. I don't like space hoppers. I thought those are dumb. My own personal opinion. Your mileage may vary. So instead, I used catachans. And I, at the time, I literally cut like little Q-tip, like the middle parts of the Q-tip, that tube, and I put it on top of the last guns, and I painted it like a scope. So I had all my catachans, and I gave them all pistol holsters because Ratlings have pistols, and I put scopes on their last guns. And because they weren't wearing armor, I ran them as Ratlings. Like, yeah, everybody else has armor. These guys are running around in like t-shirts, so they're a lot more, easier to kill. If anything, they're taller, so they're easier to hit. They can't hide as well. So technically, I modeled for disadvantage. Someone's like, no, you can't use this as Ratlings. I was like, are you serious? I actually have to go and buy 10 Ratlings to run a squad of 10 Ratlings?
Yeah, that stuff I despise. Like your idea is like so interesting and cool, and like just for someone just be like, no.
I feel fluff really helps. I feel when you back stuff up with good, just fluffy stuff, more people are just like, oh, okay, I see that. Fine, fair enough.
Like, and the main reason is like because like Warhammer's rules, like this is an ever evolving and changing like game and meta game. So to expect someone to just like, especially a new person, to model, like to be able to like expect to model their stuff like exactly how it's supposed to be, so that when they go to like a tournament or like some kind of local event, like that people know exactly what it is, instead of like, well, it looks like it mostly, and it's the rough silhouette and size, it's on the right base. So gameplay wise, does it really fucking matter? Like,
so I think for me, like I even go as far as, because I model for what's fun, and I've got fluff to back it up, all this stuff, but I'll print off little index cards for each of my units, and I will hand it to my opponent and say, okay, this is this guy, this is what he has, or this is this unit, this is what they have. They're marked, you can tell what they've got. So that way, oh, well, he doesn't have an air bursting cannon on the model. Well, it's on the sheet that I gave you pre-game. We agreed that this was good. So he's got an air bursting fragmentation launcher.
Boom, and there we go. Like I said, it comes back to that session 0, that agreement, and like I said, that one example is my fault for not reading the paper. But like I said, but there's the extreme to bring it back to bolt action. What's important in bolt action is there's something called Japanese bamboo fighters who are extremely hated. They don't have guns; they just have bamboo poles. And Japanese officers, traditionally, historically, they had samurai swords. And a sword gives you a close combat advantage. I won't get too far into the rules. It allows you an advantage when you're in close combat, but so does an assault weapon. So and it's no points cost, so why would you not take a submachine gun instead of a sword? So when I modeled my character, I modeled him holding a sword so he looks different from all the other models so you can tell who the commander is. But he's also got an SMG on his back. And to me, that kind of covers it. One guy's like, well, he's not holding it, so he's not using it. I was like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
But if someone took spear fighters and been like, okay, these are actually SMG troops, and be like, nah, chief. You can't hold bamboo spears and say those are rifles. That's where I'm like, no way. I was like, but if you're just like,
unless you're an orc.
To be honest, I think that's someone like acting in bad faith. To be honest, like
I'll tell the story. My first game in bolt action was rough. I love bolt action. My first game, I cannot wait to like go blow for blow, because I hadn't played war games in years. It's been years since I played a good war game. So as I was driving home, the more and more I realized, like, that son of a... I was like, man, I got every type of bad... There's so many red flags. I'm talking like walking down Beijing, so many red flags that I should have saw ahead of time, but I was just so excited to play with these models I painted that I didn't care. My fault. But there were so many signs ahead of time when I played this guy, like, so many things went wrong. At the end of the day, I was like, man, like, everything that could go wrong, it did go wrong. And I was like, wow. But yeah, that was one of the many things that happened. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. But I'll go over that game one day. It's actually quite humorous.
Yeah, like, especially since that was your first game, and I'm assuming you told that guy that was your first game of bolt action.
So when I showed up,
that is literally just being a douchebag.
Everybody else was prepping for the tournament next month, and I was like, look, I only have 500 points. I don't have the 1250. I don't want to hold anybody back. I'll wait until everyone's done playing, and then I'll play whoever stays over just to get some practice game in. One guy's like, well, I don't play tournaments anymore. That should have been red flag number one. He was like, but I think I can get 500 points together. I was like, okay. So, yeah. Nobody else wanted to play this guy, and he wasn't going to tournaments. So that should have been the red flag.
Dude, that is red flag central, man. Oh, nobody wants to play him. There's probably a reason for that. Hey, Tiki, you mentioned earlier that with the new Twisted Metal show, I have not watched it yet, but I've got to. I think there's going to be like a huge resurge of Gaslands players, and I want to say you mentioned that you were going to do some stuff with Gaslands on your channel. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
So with the popularity of the new Twisted Metal show coming out, I'm anticipating a huge, massive surge towards Gaslands, which is awesome. It's a lot of fun. If you're an Orky player out there, you love kit bashing, I'm telling you, you're going to love Gaslands. All you need is the book, a printer to print out the templates, some dice, and Hot Wheels cars, and you go from there, and you can scale it to 28mm if you want. So look towards my channel. I should be putting out some content here soon. I'll still be doing Conflict 47 content, but I'm also going to be putting out a little bit of Gaslands content too, so look for that coming up soon.
Is this on?
Box reporting is active.
Stick to that boy. Tune in next time on the Munitorum Breakroom podcast. That's enough, boys. I think they got it. They'll be listening if they knows what's good for them.